Good. Can you hear me? Good morning, everybody. It's really great to be here. I mean, this is a completely full room here. This is amazing. My name is Karlitschek, and thanks for the invitation, introduction here. I'm a long-time open source developer and contributor in all kinds of different projects. I was active, or still active, in KDE for 14 years now. That's really long time. I was a board member at KDE and developer and organized conferences and all kinds of things. I did the Open PC project, the Open Desktop Network, but I think the main reason I'm invited here today is ownCloud. ownCloud is, as was just mentioned, was started by me 4.5 years ago as an open source project, classical open source project, which means that, well, at the beginning I was alone, I did all the work alone. This is how it starts. But very quickly after the version 1.0, more and more people got involved, and we are building up a community of contributors who helped with that. And then we also founded a company around it. We have about 50 people in our company now. And over 300 contributors for the ownCloud open source project who are working on the code all the time. So yeah, this is I'm quite happy with that. But I don't really want to talk about ownCloud too much. I mean, I can't help myself. I will mention it a few times. But the real topic is cloud computing in general and trends in this space. So the topic of this talk is crushing data silos with ownCloud, or how to survive in a cloudy world. I mean, Patrick just mentioned this a few minutes ago, that cloud computing changes everything. So this is really something that's really turning our IT upside down, and we have to make sure that this is done in the right way, so that we're not ending in a future which is not so good. So I found this a study from Symantec here. They asked some companies, and 70% of all companies and businesses and organizations said that they're already uploading their data and their files to the cloud. So 70% of all companies. So we can really say that cloud computing, this is not something for the future that will perhaps happen in the future sometime. No, this is basically old news, right? It's already happened. What I also find interesting is that 40% of those, they already experienced exposure of confidential information. Right? There's always the idea with cloud, yeah, I don't know where my data is stored. It's somewhere, who has access to it? How does this fit together with data protection laws and so on? This is all not really theoretical, right? This happens every day today. Like 40% of these companies, their data is basically leaked to someone who shouldn't have access. The second number I also find is interesting is that 40% reported that they had data loss, because you might think that, well, the cloud is so safe, right? It's like backup is automatic. I don't have to care. It's magic, right? But, well, not really. Right? A lot of data is actually lost. So this is all not so easy. We actually have to think about it, of the direction that we have here and what we can do to do it right. Because of that, I want to talk about 3 things today, basically. The first thing is fixing the Dropbox problem. So this is, I will talk about this in a second. The Dropbox problem, basically the public cloud problem, making sure that this is done right. Second is data silos, the data silos trend and what we can do here. And the third is a more like forward-looking thing about how the cloud architecture really should work, because it should be federated and distributed. But let's start with the first topic, the Dropbox problem. So what is the Dropbox problem? So this is a graphic that I think describes what we mean with Dropbox problem. We have here on one side here, we have user A and user B. They are just users in an organization or a public administration somewhere or at a university, and they have their computers and they work with their files and they exchange their files, and that's all good and safe. because they're behind the firewall here, and that's all good. But nowadays, of course, those users, they also have these other devices here, right? They have their phones and tablets, and they have their computers at home, and they also want to work with that. So they want to access their files from their tablets and from their smartphones and so on. So how do they do this? Well, from the user point of view, very easy. Just take the files from the file servers or from whatever systems you have internally, upload it to Dropbox here in the middle, and then you can share it and you can sync it to all your devices. And when I talk about Dropbox here, by the way, this is only an example, right? I mean, Google Drive or iCloud or OneDrive from Microsoft, it's all basically the same idea. So public cloud here in the middle. So the users basically take the file, go through the firewall, put it somewhere on the internet, and they can work with the files, which is good. But that's, of course, obviously a huge problem for IT, because who has access to this data, right? It's not clear. What are the user accounts? How does backup work? How does archiving work? Is this even legal, right? Is this even compliant to the data protection laws? So this is what we call the Dropbox problem. So created by Dropbox, basically, because Dropbox is a service, consumer service, which is, it's really nice, it's really good, because it's super simple to use. It's mainly free. If you only have a few files, it's completely for free. It's super easy to install. It just works. It's really, really nice. Unfortunately, at the risk of the IT. So what are the problems in detail? First is security. Well, as we know, most of these public cloud services, they come from the US. And from the people in the US, it's not really a problem, right? It's just a company who offers a service that's nice. From us, who come from different countries, it's actually important where the files are physically stored, because this means which laws apply. I mean, if we upload something to the US, somehow, magically, different laws that we might not even know apply to our data. And question is this compliant to some regulations do we have, to laws that we have? That's an open question. Then the login effect, right? I mean, in IT, in normal IT, in companies and in universities and so on, we are used to the fact that you can choose different software products for the same need. So we can, if you need a groupware server, if you need a mail server, there are different options and we can choose from them. The problem here is if all our users upload our files to Dropbox, then they make the decision for us. And then we are basically locked to use Dropbox. If we then as a IT or some organization decide, hey, we move to, I don't know, something else, we can't even do that. We can't take the decision anymore. We don't own the user accounts, right? It's all owned by the users. The users do this for us. That's a problem. Then the pricing. As we all know, most of these services are not really expensive. It's not a problem. Well, if you have a lot of data, on the ownCloud side, for example, we have users like CERN and big universities. They have lots of data. They have petabytes of data. Well, try to call Dropbox or Google what the price for a petabyte is. I mean, that's not really practical. Then the speed. If you have big files, if you work with media, with movies and so on, then and you want to share something with your colleague next door, well, if every file that I want to share with someone next door has to upload it to the US and then download it again through the internet, maybe that's not so fast anymore. User management, who controls the access to the files? That's a big problem, because the IT department, we can't reset passwords anymore. We can't lock accounts. I mean, if someone leaves the company, no one can lock the account of this guy, because the account is owned by the user, not by the company anymore. And extensibility, if we want to extend this with more features, then obviously if it's open source and if it's run locally, it can be done. If you use something that's provided by Google or Microsoft, well, good luck with that. That's what we call a Dropbox problem. And this is a possible solution. I mean, there's obviously here the ownCloud logo in the middle, but I want to stress that there are other solutions out there we can do something similar. What I really want to say here is that companies and organizations should consider to use private clouds for some use cases. So something that can be installed inside your company behind your firewall that users can use to store and synchronize your files, and that's also accessible from the outside. So because then you have something which is your own local Dropbox, your own local OneDrive, your own local Google Drive, and so on. So this is something where your users have the exact same functionality, but you control it. What does control mean? This means that the existing user accounts, if you have users in your Active Directory or in your LDAP somewhere, there can be used as authentication, your existing backup, your existing archiving, your existing firewall rules, and so on and so on. So all this is still in place. So what you add the functionality without losing anything. That's the story here. I don't want to bore you with technology too much. This is basically how the basic architecture could look like. You have an ownCloud server in the middle here somewhere. Then this ownCloud server accesses all the storage here that you have. You have like an existing server that you can use, or if you're running out of space, you can buy some storage from Amazon, for example, that you can use. Of course, it has to be encrypted so that it's secure. Then on the other side, you have all your devices. You have your desktop and your tablets and your phones and your browsers, and they can all access your ownCloud. From an IT perspective, you have all the metering, monitoring, central administration in place, very important. And on the bottom, we have this plugin system in ownCloud where you can plug in all kinds of extensions into it, like an LDAP server, virus scanner, versioning, trash bin, encryption, and so on and so on. So this is the flexible architecture here. So now I talked a lot about ownCloud. What really is this? I mean, what really is ownCloud? A little bit of overview. I mentioned something in the beginning already. It's an open source software. Started as an open source project 4.5 years ago. It's licensed under the HGPL license. It's a license basically means, I don't know how many are familiar with open source licenses, basically means that everybody can use it for free, can do whatever they want with it. It's completely open. The only restriction is if you extend it, if you change it somehow, that then you also have to open source your changes. So you basically have to give back to the community. We have over 300 core contributors. Core contributors are people who have direct write access into the repository after a review process, of course. We are growing quite nicely. And of course, we have even more people than that if you count all the translators and testers and packagers and so on. It's difficult to count how many installations are out there. I mean, at least 500,000 is the latest estimation. Additionally to this open source project, as I said, we founded a company 3 years ago. So if you want to have an enterprise version of ownCloud, if you want to have additional support and services and consulting, all these things, so we can also offer this from the company side. What does it do? ownCloud basically provides you access to files. I mean, you already figured this out from my previous slides, but I just want to stress it again. It provides a web interface. It can be mounted directly via WebDAV from Mac, Windows, Linux, just as a network drive. Just behaves completely the same. Clients for Mac, Windows, Linux, like a small application that sits in your sys tray that synchronizes folders between your computers and your phone and your server and so on. Android and iOS clients for tablets and phones. And we have all kinds of open APIs to integrate into other systems. So this obviously is very important, especially for the future. So this is a screenshot. I don't know if you can see it. Screenshot of the latest version. I think this is a very nice web application. It's basically like a file manager. You can see all your files and work with that. It's a very nice HTML5 web application, responsive, so works on phones too. It's quite easy to use, I think. This is a screenshot. I can't really see it. This is a screenshot from our desktop client. So we, as I have mentioned, we have these desktop clients that you can install on your laptop, your desktop. They can synchronize folders between the server and the desktop, just as Dropbox and Google Drive. And this is an example of the mobile application. So there are iOS and Android applications out there. ownCloud also supports encryption. That's very important because I mentioned earlier that you can use storage, for example, from Amazon and other cloud vendors. Obviously, the files that are stored there then has to be encrypted. And this is supported with server-side encryption. AES 256 is supported, and we're working on client-side encryption. The last thing I want to say about ownCloud here is that it's actually interesting that it's way more than files. I mean, the file part, synchronizing your files, that's the core of it. This was the idea from the beginning. But there are more and more functionalities because there's this idea to have additional plugins or apps into ownCloud. So there's already a calendar and a contact address book, bookmarks, movies, photos, to-do lists, and so on. I think there are about 50 or 60 of these community-built extensions here that you can install on your ownCloud to do more than just files with it. So this is basically the first part of my presentation about the Dropbox problem, because I think that if you want to protect our data, if you want to make sure that it fits into our existing infrastructure, then a private cloud solution is really, really important. I don't want to live in a future where basically all the files in the world are stored by 4 big companies somewhere in the US. That's a bit crazy. I think that local IT organizations, local hosting centers, local companies, local universities, they should work with their files too. So private clouds is very important. The last thing I want to talk about are the crushing data silos. When I Googled for data silos, I found this picture here, which I think describes it quite nicely. So what is a data silo? The one of you who are in IT as long as I am, I don't know, over 30 years, remember the good old days where basically everything that was IT related, every data, every file was stored on a server somewhere, on one place in the company, in the organization. In the 80s it was a Novell server. At home it was your personal computer where all your files are. So this was the easy time, right? You're looking for a file, I know where it is. It's on the server because there's only one of them. Obviously it's on the server or on the desktop. Unfortunately or fortunately, depends, nowadays we have more and more of those systems, right? We have like our groupware, then we have our ERP system, then we have our NFS server and our FTP server, and then we have Dropbox and Google Drive, and then we have new modern object stores and other databases, and so on and so on. So we have all those different data silos. And what's interesting is that all these vendors that offer these different data silos, they want to protect their data silo, right? Because this is how they make money, which means migrating between them is not so easy. Try to talk to Microsoft how to migrate from SharePoint to the competing product from whatever, Oracle. And it's not so easy because they protect their silos. So here, this is a picture of just a few of the most common data silos that I think exist. I mean, everybody has some kind of file server, Samba server, Windows file server. We have NFS, AFS, FTP, SFTP. Then we have this enterprise social network things like Jive. It's a big trend. Exists sometimes. There are also files in there. Then we have the cloud space. Then we have Dropbox, Google Drive. Someone decided, hey, Amazon, they have cheap storage. Just rent some storage and put some files in there. So we have another data silo, SharePoint, and so on. As you notice, I have ownCloud here too at the beginning, because ownCloud, as I described in the first part of my presentation, is just another data silo. It's just another place where I can put my files. So this idea of a private cloud is great because it protects the data, but from a data silo perspective, that's not so cool. That's not so good because it's just another place where files could be. Just another data silo. So what we need here in the case of data silos is we need to have unified access to all the data silos. So I, as a user, I want to have one view over all my files. It shouldn't matter where they're actually stored. Then, of course, I want to have the modern file sync and share technology. So if the files are on an NFS server or and the files are on SharePoint, and I still want to access it from my tablet, and it's not provided by the backend, I still want to do that. Single sign-on, right? I want to have one password, one login for everything. I don't want to log into like 10 or 20 or 30 different systems to work. I want a unified logging and auditing, and so on and so on. So these different data silos, they are really painful. So because of that, from the ownCloud perspective, but I think it's a bigger trend than that, we want to solve this with an approach where we have this unified data access engine. So in the case of ownCloud, I have to promote ownCloud here a bit more, sorry. ownCloud 7, the latest version, we have the ability to mount all these different data silos into your ownCloud. So we can basically mount your SharePoint into your ownCloud, and then all your SharePoint files are just a folder in your ownCloud. And the same with a Windows server, and the same with NFS, SFTP, Dropbox. You can actually mount your Dropbox into ownCloud. Additionally you can mount your Google Drive into ownCloud. You can use some object stores and mount into your ownCloud. And you can mount a second ownCloud into your other ownCloud if you want. So the idea is then you have one central place, one view, one interface where you can log in and there are all your files there. And for the users, it's actually, for the administrators, it's actually very nice because you only have one password, right? All the logging is done only once. All the auditing and access controls and firewall rules and so on, they only exist once. So it's actually very easy to use. So this is from my perspective very, very important to fight this data silo. The third thing I want to talk about are federated sharing and collaboration in cloud computing. That's just a lot of buzzwords in just one sentence. Let me explain what I really mean with that. So let's say, so this is the world obviously, let's say we have users on 4 different continents. Let's say I'm here in the US and I'm working together with someone in Australia over there, and I want to collaborate. And collaboration here in this case means I want to have a folder on my desktop, and every file I put into this folder appears on the folder of this guy in Australia or in Asia or somewhere else. Right? It's just like seamless collaboration all over the world. This is what I want to have. And there are different ways to achieve that. There's what we call the first generation cloud. This basically works like that. You have one central cloud instance, and you have all the clients that basically all connect to this central thing, which sits in the middle like a spider in a network, and obviously controls all the data. So this is like the Dropbox and the Google Drives and so on. Obviously very easy to use. It's just easy, right? Centralization, easy. And then obviously the problems with that. We already talked about the problems, user provisioning, speed, cost, and so on. So that's obviously the problem with this approach. Then this brings us to the second generation. And this is basically what I described in the first and second part of my talk about the private clouds and being able to mount your local data. So this is what we call the second generation on-premise clouds, which means that everybody has their own private cloud. Right? There's a university has a cloud, a company has a cloud, and I have my cloud at home, and there's another cloud, and so on and so on. like 100,000 of them. And that's all great because they're all very fast and the security is great and the administration is great and you can use all your local Windows files and your SharePoint files and they're all accessible and that's all nice. Unfortunately, the problem with that, I mean, I think you can already see it from the picture, is worldwide collaboration here is not so easy anymore, right? I mean, we have like the security here, this is good, but working together is actually well, difficult. It's, well, we have the security. We said that we want to have security. Now we have security, which means we can't share anymore. So an IT administrator or a company is in the strange situation that we have to choose between convenience and security. We can't have both. And that's the problem. And this is what we think we have to solve with the third generation of cloud computing, which are like local clouds in your university, your company, and so on. But we enable something that we called server-to-server sharing. So this is a feature that we also have in ownCloud 7, where we can basically share files and folders between different private cloud installations. So this works like that. I have my cloud in my company, for example, and I synchronize and share my files with this server for my tablet, my phone, for my desktop, and so on. But I can just, with one click, share this folder with my colleague in Australia, as I described earlier. And then my cloud server talks to the cloud server in Australia, and then this is shared. So this is like distributed, federated cloud infrastructure. Okay, cool. But now you might look into this picture and think, well, okay, but what we really wanted to have is security here, right? I mean, if my cloud here in my university somehow talks to other clouds all over the world, is this then, don't we lose then the security again? Because earlier I said that private clouds bring you security, but is this really secure? Well, it is if you use something that we call the file firewall. The idea of the file firewall is that the administrator of these cloud services, they can define their rules. They can basically define what the rules are. So someone from a university can say that, well, only users in this certain LDAP groups can share with people in different countries, but only files that are in a certain path, and only if they are from a certain file type, and only if they are, I don't know, accessed from an iPad that I have certified before, and so on. So the idea is that basically all these administrators, they control the rules of their domain. They control who can access what, when, where. And this then combined with the server-to-server idea, I think this is, from my perspective, this is the future. So this is how it should work. Like I said earlier, I don't want to live in a world where everything is centralized somewhere in a company in the US. I want to have like a federated, distributed future. And this is what we call the third generation cloud here. So to wrap this up, my question on the first slide was, how can we survive in a cloudy world? Well, I think there are a few things that we can do so that we actually survive, hopefully. The first thing is, I think it should be, users should be able to host their cloud storage wherever they want. So if I decide to host it at Amazon, that's fine, but that's then my decision. If I want to host it like locally in my IT department, then I also want to be able to do that. I'm not a fan of centralized hosting, as you already figured out already, I think. Then the second thing is I want to be in control of the security and privacy of this data. So I think that files that are owned by us, I want to make sure that I am in control. I don't want to give up control over all our IT security and privacy to a company somewhere else. I think we have to stay in control. Third, I think we have to use all our existing infrastructure. As we know, we have all these data silos, we have all these systems, these sometimes legacy systems, and we have to be able to use them. Like if someone tells me, hey, shut this down, upload everything to Dropbox, and then you're happy? Well, I'm not so sure. Fourth, if you establish this federated server-to-server sharing concept, then we have the combination of best of both worlds. Then we can have the collaboration and the security combined. And obviously, this all should be open source, because open source gives you the guarantee that it's secure, gives you the guarantee that there are no backdoors, gives you the guarantee that you don't have a vendor login, gives you the guarantee that it can be extended and enhanced in the future. Thank you.